Hi everyone, I'm Jane, and today we're gonna paint a really fun, interpretive, abstract-ish portrait. Now what I want you to do when you're painting this is not necessarily just follow along step by step with me. I want you to paint something that speaks about you. Choose your colors based on the things that you like, colors that make you feel a certain way for a certain mood that you might be going for in your painting. On my background here, I did kind of an abstract landscape with low hills and a couple of trees coming up because those are things that I really like. I like to paint like that a lot when I'm painting for myself. And you all know me, I like creepy trees. So those are the elements that I chose to include in the background of my painting, but yours might be completely different. You might like to paint a nebula in the background or something completely abstract with just colors that you like. Whatever you choose to do. I've taught you guys so many different techniques and shown you so many different mediums. Experiment with those and see what you can come up with for your background here. Make sure you check out the video description below for a full list of materials, and let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is paint kind of an abstract, very simple background landscape. And to do that, I'm going to use Phthalo Blue, Ivory Black, and remember Ivory Black is much more transparent and softer than Mars Black. And I'm using titanium white. My titanium white is the Liquitex Heavy Body, but you don't have to use Heavy Body if you don't have it. You can definitely do this with just regular basics or craft paint or whatever you have. I'm going to use a 2-inch brush because that's just my preference for this. But if you just have a 1-inch brush, you can do that too. So I'm just going to wet it in the jar a bit and wipe it off on the edge. So I'm going to get just a little bit of Phthalo Blue because I don't want this to be terribly bright, and with the Ivory Black being very transparent and soft, the Phthalo Blue can easily overpower it. So I'm going to mix it in there with my black. Maybe drag a little more phthalo in there. And I'm going to get a bit of white. This is going to be for my horizon line, and I want my horizon line to be fairly low, right about here. I'm just using the edge of the brush to draw it in there. And then I'm going to turn my brush flat and start streaking that color in. Get a little water on your brush if you're having a hard time getting your paint to lay down. A little more white, because I want the bottom of my ground to be a little bit lighter than the horizon. So I've taught you guys a lot of different techniques and mediums and color combinations and all kinds of things. So what I really want you to be doing with this painting is experiment with those techniques. I don't necessarily want you to just follow what I'm doing here, because this painting is more about expressing yourself rather than imitating what I'm doing. I'm going to get a little more blue and black. And more white. And I'm going to start filling in up here at the top. So I'm just going kind of above my horizon. It's okay if they blend together a bit because I'm going to add more to that horizon in a minute. A little more water. I'm really just picking up white now because I still have quite a bit of the blue and black on my brush. And I'm going to just let this fade up to the top, slowly just adding more white. Remember though, the harder you push, the more color you're going to lay down. So even though I'm just picking up white, if I put good pressure on my brush, notice I deposited more blue and more black. And I think I'm going to take kind of that randomy brush stroke through here. I'm really just kind of experimenting with this as I go as well. That's what I like about painting faces the way I do, is you can easily go into it without a plan and kind of let the face and the emotion and personality happen. See, I still haven't picked up any more blue and black since I started the horizon, but I've still got lots of it coming off. I might even take a little bit more white and just insinuate some cloudy areas here. And I'm just using super light pressure just to dust that in. All right, now before this gets a chance to dry too much, I'm gonna do some low hills in my distant horizon here. And I didn't clean off my brush, I just got some extra water on it. I'm gonna load up with some Ivory Black and a hint of Phthalo Blue. Now, because I'm gonna do the face in black, that's why I'm using Ivory Black here, so that I don't get too dark in my distance and end up making the face blend into the background. So I'm going to use the edge of the brush again, right about where I started my horizon, and kind of wiggle it around as I go to insinuate some hills. And then with the edge of my brush, just kind of streak it in at the bottom. Now I've got my angle brush that I've wet in the jar, and I'm just going to pick up Ivory Black. My background is still pretty wet, so the colors will streak into the black here. But if your background isn't wet and you don't want it too dark, just pick up a little bit of your other colors. I'm going to draw some very simple trees. I'm going to do one right about here. Just kind of let it taper out. See how I'm picking up those colors and my tree is not a solid black. Just really simple. I'm not putting a lot of energy into these branches. Maybe I'll add another one here that's a little bit bigger. And see up through here, the black is almost not depositing at all. It's almost just cutting through that white where it was thick, but I like that, so I'm just gonna leave it like that. And let your trees cross in front of each other if you're doing trees. If you're not doing trees, that's okay too. You know, if you wanted to do like a nebula in the background or a sunny day with a field of flowers, just so long as it's not a similar color to what you're going to be doing your face in, so you can see it. All right, so there's the background for my abstract-ish face that I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let this dry completely so that when I start adding the outline for the face, I don't pick up the background color. I want you to think of this process really creatively. You don't necessarily have to use black or white for the outlines of the face. You can do any color you like. You could do a dark background with white outlines for the face. You could do a bright yellow and blue background with red outlines for the face. Whatever you feel like expresses your personality and the mood that you want to get across the best. Once we start drawing the face, I want you to keep in mind that we are not going for a Renoir or a Da Vinci portrait with lots of realism. We're going for expression. And so I want you to be free with it. You don't have to have the proportions of your face exactly right. Technical perfection and emotion do not have to go hand in hand. you can absolutely convey emotion and make someone really connect with your piece without technical perfection. So don't focus on that. I don't want to see anybody posting their painting and saying, well, it's not perfect. Perfection should never be your goal. You can have a perfect painting that conveys zero emotion. So focus on emotion. All right, so my canvas is dry now, and I'm going to sketch out my face to start with chalk. So everybody has their way that they like to sketch out a face. Some people start with eyes, some people start with the shape of the head, some people draw out every teeny little detail. I like to do kind of a simplish version of how to sketch a face. So I'm going to determine first where I want my chin, because I don't want to end up with my chin clear up here, and I don't want to end up with my chin clear down here. I want to give enough room that I can see some of the neck and an insinuation of shoulders. So I think my chin would be probably about right here at the 1/3 mark. So I'm just going to draw a line there. And then I'm going to come up and up, about to the edges of my canvas. And that's not necessarily how wide my head is actually going to be. That's just how I'm going to start. Now I know I want the top of my head off of the canvas. So I'm going to start at the top here and draw a line straight down to the chin. And it is kind of curved, and that's going to help me insinuate that the face is turned this way just a little bit. But if you make your lines straight, all of your lines straight, then maybe your face is facing directly at you. Now I'm going to put a line in the middle, and that's where the nose goes. And again, I'm going to curve it just a little bit. It's curved down a bit. The mouth is about halfway between the nose and the chin. And the eyes are about halfway between the nose and the top of the head. My neck, I'm going to come from here at the edge of the face and just gently swoop it down. Stop right about there. It's about 1 inch from the bottom. Now over here, because I want to insinuate that the face is turned, if I make the neck exactly the same on this side, she's going to look like a football player. She's going to have this super wide neck. But because her face is turned, her neck on this side would actually be a little bit closer to her chin than it is over here, where her neck appears to be closer to the edge of her jaw. So I'm going to come from here. It's about 1 inch off of the center of the face, and bring that down. A shoulder, I'm going to start right off of the line here, about 3/4 of an inch up from the edge, and just bring that down. Same over here, but I'm going to elongate it a little bit. Again, that will give the impression that she's turned. So you can see less of this shoulder because it's turned toward you. You can see a little more of this shoulder because it's pushed away from you a bit. Now I'm not going to worry about drawing in her features with the chalk, because the chalk lines are really wide and they may get lost and get kind of convoluted. But if you need to, you can go right ahead and do that. I'm actually just going to get my brush and start painting in her features. Now before you start actually drawing the face, I want you to get online and Google a bunch of images of simple face drawings. Get an idea for how different eye positions, different shapes of mouths and noses, and the way they are connected or not connected give you a different type of face, a different emotion, a different personality. So take some of those ideas that you have and practice them on a piece of paper and figure out which ones work best for your style, which ones you like the best, and then commit it to the canvas after that. If you're feeling really experimental and you don't want to take the time to do that, then absolutely jump right in it and just slap a face on here. Just see who's living in that canvas and who comes out. So I'm going back to my angle brush, but if you're more comfortable with a round brush, you can most definitely use that. And I have Mars black paint. Now because I'm using both Mars and Ivory, I've put the Mars on the complete opposite end so I don't accidentally grab the Ivory black. So I'm just going to load up with a bit. You can always come back and widen your lines later, but just start out with a really crisp edge and just get an impression of where they're going to be. So I'm going to start with her eye right here, and I'm going to start it right about on that line. I'm using the edge of my brush. Remember, the long tip always drags, so I'm not going to draw it like that and crush that tip in. I'm gonna draw it like that. So I'm gonna start at the top of her eye and just do a simple curve. Same thing over here. Again, to follow that line, notice I started on that line and I ended on that line. And same thing over here. I'm gonna extend this one a little bit because my other one got a little bit bigger. I'm gonna go down to a little round brush for her nose. And her nose is gonna sit, let's see, I think I'm gonna bring it down just a little bit. I don't really like where my lines are, so you don't have to stick with your lines. So I'm gonna start with kind of a little U shape and extend the edges just a bit. And give her a little bit of a nostril. I didn't connect it to this. And maybe just a little bit of one over here. For her lips, I'm gonna do her little Cupid's bow right here. I'm gonna give her a pretty sharp one. Down and slightly out. Let's give her some eyeballs. So her eye that I'm going to put in here, I'm not going to just draw it right there in the center, because if it's not touching her eyelids, it's going to look like her eyes are really wide, like she's shocked. So you kind of want the color of the eye to touch one or the other of the eyelids, and depending on which one it is going to give you a different type of personality or mood. So I'm going to have it coming off of the top here. Kind of big. I want her to have nice big eyes. And notice how it looks like the top lid is kind of down over top of it a little bit. And the tricky thing here is making sure they're about in the center. If they're off a little bit, then it'll look like she's looking off in two different directions. And painting at the side of a camera sometimes makes things like this a little tricky. Back to my angle brush, but you can stick with whatever brush you're comfortable with. And I'm going to give a little bit of an eyelid on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is start pointing down here, come up, down, and over, rather than, I'm not going to make a line like that. I'm going to kind of come from here up like that, so it's tucked down a little bit on the front. Almost to the corner here. Up, down, and around. And same thing on this side. Sometimes it's hard when you're trying to make things proportionate to do one direction and then do the other one the other direction. But like I said, technical perfection is not the goal here. Emotion is the goal here. Let's give her some eyebrows. I'm going to start on this one, right about in line with the corner of her eye. So what I mean is the eye here is about 3/4 of an inch from the center line. So I'm not going to make her eyebrow closer to the center line or farther away from it. If I were to draw a line straight up like that, parallel to this center line, that's about where her eyebrow would start. And you can shape them however you like. Now what I'm going to do on this eyebrow is bring it around about like this one, but where it comes in contact, when it gets close to the center line, I'm going to curve it down more and bring just a little line for her nose down that center line. But I'm not going to connect it with anything down here. That again is going to help give the insinuation that her head is turned a little bit. Let's give her some pupils. Right in the center, and consider what's going on up here. Her eyelid is covering a little bit of her eyeball, so you don't want to draw the pupil just in the center of what you can see because it'll seem off center. Try and picture where that line would go up through here and where the center would be. And I'm doing kind of smaller pupils because when you're relaxed, your pupils contract a bit. When you are excited or afraid or nervous, they get bigger. And I want her to seem pretty calm. Let's draw her chin. I'm back to my angle brush. And her chin is going to be right about here. Let's see, right about here. I'm going to bring this up around. Notice I didn't follow my chalk line there because now I have a better idea of where I want her face to be. Another thing that's going to make it seem like her head is turned a little bit is making her face wider on this side and more narrow on this side. So over here, I'm going to bring it in just a little bit farther. From her forehead here, we'll come down. We're going to dip in just a little bit there by her eye and meet up with that. Same thing over here. We're going to come down a bit, dip in just a little bit by her eye. It is really difficult painting her on a camera sometimes. But all of these lines here on the side, you can cover up once we start doing the hair. Let's get her neck in there. And remember how I swooped it from her chin. I'm gonna do the same thing, even though those lines don't meet anymore. I'm gonna come from here and just kind of swoop it straight down. I'm gonna bring her shoulder up a little bit higher. Meet it right at this line. I'm about 1.5 inches above the end of it. And just let it lightly swoop down. And off of this one, but I'm gonna take this one a little bit more all the way across. Let's draw her hair. I want her to have really big full hair that's gonna block out a lot of this background, and that's going to draw attention to her eyes and to the trees that we've put back here. So I'm going to start from up here and kind of bring it gracefully down around. I can cover part of her face if I want to. And down so it stops at her shoulder and looks like her hair is behind her shoulder. Same thing over here. I'm gonna let that one actually go in front of her shoulder. And now all of this around the outside of the hair, I'm gonna fill in with black, including anywhere that it covers her face. These little parts in between, I'm not gonna fill in just yet. We will fill that in a little bit. And actually, I've decided I'm gonna fill it in with some black-blue mixture. And I'm using Mars Black, because I do want it to be fairly dark. And a little bit of white, just so it's not pure black. And I'm not really mixing them. Do you see how I just grabbed a little snap of white and it's kind of marbled on here? So I'm gonna use my brush flat and just start filling in her hair. All my brush strokes are gonna follow the direction of her hair. You can use the edge of your brush to get right up against that line you drew and really sharpen it if you like. I just mix up more when I need it, and I'm not too worried about making the exact same color. You guys notice that I'm painting on an 8x10 canvas again, or I'm using that as a palette. I'm actually enjoying using these 8x10 canvases as palettes. And then when I'm done with it, I can just spread around the extra paint so I have a smooth surface for next time. And then for you guys, so you can see what I'm doing easier, I just painted it over with some white paint so that there's no confusion about what color I'm using. Right here, if you're having a hard time getting to the edge of the canvas, you can change the direction of your brush stroke to get it on there, but then just go over it to smooth it out so it moves in the direction that you want her hair to go. I'm going to keep the bulk of the highlights right around her face. So as I get up here to the edge of the canvas, I'm picking up little to no white, mostly just blue and black. My line got a little wonky here, so I'm just going to clean that up with the edge of my brush. And we're going to do the same thing over here. Notice how I have my hand and my pinky placed on the canvas. That's helping me get a lot of control. And then I can just kind of drag my arm rather than trying to, move my hand. I can just drag my arm and I can twist the brush as I need to when I get around curves. And I'm going to take that right over top of her shoulder. I think I'm actually going to bring this piece of her hair in and around a little bit more. I think a lot of times people think that if they don't have technical ability or a well thought out plan, that they can't paint something. But I feel like painting is a very emotional thing that you can absolutely do with no skill and little to no planning. It's just all about what you want to do and then just doing it without fear. And experimenting is part of that process. So for example, on this painting, I was working up ideas for paintings for you for this week and trying out a bunch of different things. And I had done a background very similar to what you see here, and then didn't know where to go from there, so I just kind of set it aside and abandoned it. And then when I needed a canvas to practice another painting idea, I had that one sitting there available And I was being lazy and didn't want to gesso it and prepare it because I was just gonna play with an idea. So I just picked it up and started doing the face over top of that background. I'm just adding a couple of little highlights throughout here. And I really liked the way the background shined through the face. And I really felt like it kind of, you know, said something about me and the way that I paint and the things that I like to paint. So I kind of feel like this is a representation of me. But you never really know when something like that is going to happen. So you just have to kind of be open to it happening. But things like that tend not to happen when you're overly concerned with perfection. Perfection, like I said earlier, should not be your goal. Salvador Dali said something about don't fear perfection because you'll never attain it. And I absolutely love that quote. I'm just going to do a couple more highlights and then we'll move on. All right, now what we're going to do is fill in these spots around her face that we didn't fill in. And so think of this as kind of the under part of her hair. So this is the hair that's on top that's exposed to the light. This is the part that's kind of deeper back in there. So I'm only going to fill it in with black. And since it's black, you can use this as an opportunity to refine her face in any way that you need to. I'm going to start on this side. I think I might bring her forehead in here just a little bit and soften this shape. I'm using the edge of my brush to get right up to the line of the top part of her hair, and I'm using the brush flat to fill it in. And I'm just painting right over those chalk lines because it's not hard to cover. It doesn't affect the paint. Now, if your hair got a little over top of the line here and it looks messy, you can just take a little bit more black and just smooth that out. I think I'm going to bring this in just a bit here. And we can start working on her face. So I'm actually just going to fill her lips in with black. Which also says something about me since I went through a pretty intense goth phase when I was in junior high. Whoops, I got a little crazy there with my line. I'll just take a clean damp brush and scrub that line back up in. So a lot of times when we use chalk, I don't really have the opportunity to show you how easily it comes off. So I have a brush here, it's clean, it's just a little bit damp, and I'm just gonna wipe it away. So you obviously wanna make sure your canvas is completely dry, but see, it just wipes clean away. Now I'm gonna start giving her a little bit of personality in her face, and I'm gonna start with her eyes. I'm gonna go back to my little round brush, and I'm just gonna fill in the circles around her eyes so they're nice and dark. And you can put as much or as little energy into these details as you want. I'm just going to pick a few spots that I really want to stand out, like her eyes and her mouth, and that's where I'm going to put the most detail. Now my eye was a little bit squashed here on the bottom, so I'm just going to bring this line out a little bit more, because the next part I'm going to do is going to cover up anything inside. I'm going to go to my angle brush and I'm going to give her just a few little flirty eyelashes. If you're more comfortable doing this with the round brush, that's perfectly fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back along the edge here, and then when I get to where I want an eyelash, I'm going to flick out from there. So I'm going to start here, come along, and flick out a little bit. And I'm really just using the tip of the angle brush. I'm going to make the eyelashes a little shorter as I get toward the center here. So they kind of taper out. Same thing on the other side here, and it's okay if it goes over top of her hair a little bit. If you want to add eyelashes on the bottom, that's fine too. I don't think I'm going to. Of course, I say that and then I'm probably going to decide that I want to. We'll see how I feel when I get there. Notice I kind of filled it in with some short ones, and then I'm going back and adding longer ones. Let's give her lips a little bit more dimension. So I'm going to load up with some fresh black paint. Since the black on her lips is dry, I think I'm going to add a bit of blue. So it still looks black, but there's a bit of blue in there. And then when I add some white, I can see that blue color. So just like we did with our hair, I'm going to load up with that dark color, grab a little snap of the white, and then kind of highlight her lips here and there. Wherever you feel like the light would be hitting them. Across her bottom lip. And anything that's too much, just get some more of your dark mixture. And you can kind of streak it in a bit. Soften any of those lines. A little bit more white. I'm going to give her a little bright spot here and there. And just like when we're highlighting anything on black, you can keep doing this until you're happy with it. If you don't like it, let it dry, paint it over with black, and do it again. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So let's add some color to her eyes. Again, I'm going to do my black-blue mixture. I'm going to add a little bit of white. Maybe some more blue. And then I'm going to go around the inside of this line with the color. Now I'm not going to trace along the top of her eye or the eyelid, because remember, this is a full circle that's being partially covered by the eyelid, so it wouldn't necessarily follow along the edge of her eyelid. I'm just using this teeny little round brush. A little more white. Get a little bit of a lighter color. And the same thing, and I'm going to overlap them a bit so we get a little bit of a blend. And now I'm going into straight white with the color that's just left on my brush. I'm not terribly worried about fully covering the background color in here because it's very similar to her eyes, so it might show through a little bit. I think she does need just a tiny bit darker right up here. I'm just kind of scrubbing at it. I have such light pressure on my brush here, it's barely touching. All right, same thing on the other eye. Blue black with just a hint of the color, and you could even make her eyes different colors if you like. Just kind of dabbing at it. It's just like a dab and a swoop. And a little scrub here and there. If you end up covering her pupil with your color, that's okay, it's black. You can add it back in afterwards. Now I'm going to glaze just a little bit of white around her eyes. So I'm just going to use just a couple drops of glazing medium. If you don't have any glazing medium or you don't want to use glazing medium, that's okay. So I'm going to grab a little blob of white, bring it over here to my medium, mix it in. Because I want to add some highlights to her eyes, but I don't want to just paint it in solid white. So I'm going to start right here along the bottom edge. Just lay some of that down. And let it kind of taper out. And then just kind of scrub it until the line disappears. I'm going to take it about all the way down to her bottom eyelid. I'm not filling in the whole area here, but again, this is your painting and you're doing it however you want to do, whatever gets the emotion and the feeling that you're going for, so you certainly can. What this is going to do is keep the background visible, but not obscure it completely. I don't even know if you can see that on there. But now I'm getting just white. I didn't pick up any more glazing medium. And I'm just going to make sure that on the other side of this black line is a nice bright white line. But I'm also going to scrub that in just a little bit because I don't want a hard line there. See how my brush is barely touching my canvas? It's just the very tip of the bristles, just kind of scrubbing out that line. And I'm going to do the same thing on this eye, but I think I'm going to do it on the opposite side. So this is my white and glazing medium. Scrub it until it just kind of fades out. And again, don't worry about your black lines. If you go over them, you can add them back in. A little bit more white just for the very outside. And lightly scrub that line out. With my glazing medium, I'm going to bring some of it out here just a little bit farther. You can do this all over her face, wherever you feel like you need a little more highlight. I think I'm actually going to do some just under her bottom eyelids too. So my white and my glazing medium, and I'm going to outline here underneath this black line, right up against it. And then lightly scrub it out. Super light pressure, because remember, when you put more pressure on your brush, you lay paint down. When you use light pressure, you soften what's already there. And that's all I'm trying to do here, is soften that. So I'm using very, very light pressure. If I push too hard here, I'm going to lay down more white. I'm going to bring it up just a bit here. And around this side a little. Maybe just a little bit more right here, a little bit heavier. And I'm pretending like those trees in the background aren't there. But if you wanted, you could always cut your highlights around them so the trees don't get obscured, or whatever your element is here. And along this side. Sometimes it's these little subtle things that you do where you barely lay down any paint that really amp up your work. You know, you don't have to draw a big hard white line here to say that there's light there. You can do it very subtly. Cover up that little piece of line that got away from me in the black. If you're having a hard time getting a spot to blend out, like I feel like that line is a little harder than I want, I just picked up glazing medium. I still have the white and everything on my brush, but I just picked up some extra glazing medium. I'm gonna start up in the white and just kind of scrub it down toward that line and past it. Just keep bringing it down very lightly until that line is gone. All right, now we're going to add a little bit of shadow to the inside of her eyes. So I'm going to get my blue-black mixture again. My brush is pretty wet and I'm just picking up a little bit of that color. Then I'm going to mix it in with my glazing medium. Pretty heavy on the medium because I don't want this color to be too intense. I want a very soft, subtle color. Now on the opposite side of where I did the white on her eyes is where I'm going to add the shadow, and mostly up toward the top. So I'm going to come around the edge just like we did with the white. Let it meet where the white is and then scrub it out so there's no line. Come up underneath her eyelid a bit. And again, scrub it out until it disappears. And you can use your finger if you need to kind of tap that out, get any line gone. I think maybe I will add just a little bit up here. But again, notice how subtle this color is. It's not a huge difference between the background. It's a little bit darker, but it's very transparent. And if you fuzz it out to nothing, it's just gonna look like a nice subtle shadow. I'm gonna take it all the way to the corner. Same thing on the other side. My blue-black mixture with glazing medium and water. Bring it down the edge here a bit. Fuzz out that line. And along underneath her eyelid. Whenever you have a little spot that doesn't want to blend, either pick up a little bit more water or a little bit more glazing medium, or even both. I'm not going to bring this one down all the way into the corner of her eye here like I did over here, because remember we have our highlights on opposite sides of her eyes to indicate where a light source is coming from, so the shadows would be the same way. So over here on this side, when I add the shadow, I'm going to bring it down a little farther into the corner over here. I'm just going to straighten out this line that got covered a little bit. And we're going to do one more thing to her eyes that's really going to give her some life. So I have a clean brush and just white paint. We're going to give her some little reflections. Now keep in mind where you have your highlight. I've got the highlight in the white on this side and on this side. So that's the side I'm going to put my little, just kind of pushed and touched, and maybe I'll do another one here. And you can add these in any shape that you like. The shape of this doesn't matter, just make sure they're in the same spot and about the same size and shape on each eye. And then I think I'm going to do something very similar on her lips in the areas where I added the highlights. I'm just going to kind of touch. And then I'm going to sign it. And there's your personalized abstract portrait. I hope you enjoyed painting this with me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how you interpret the portrait, what kind of a background you give it, what kind of an expression you give it. Another really interesting thing to do with these portraits is every so often in your painting, every couple of months, maybe once a month, once a year, whatever, revisit a painting like this again and see how it's progressed, not only in how you view yourself and how you feel in life, but how your interpretation of the face is rendered, how your techniques have improved. But remember, this is a very personal thing and it's not meant to be realistic. So if you're painting it and you feel like your proportions are off, that's perfectly okay. In fact, you can intentionally make the proportions off. When I used to run paint parties at my gallery, I would always tell people, play to your weaknesses. So that means if you know that you have a hard time with proportion, then intentionally make things disproportionate. Believe it or not, doing that is still practice toward helping you understand proportions and eventually being able to make things proportionate. If you like this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with a friend who you think would like it as well. Make sure you check out the video description below for links where you can find me all over the internet, including my Patreon page where you can get insider information, see what paintings are coming up, and lots of really cool rewards, so make sure you check that out. If you're not yet a member of our Art Monster Squad Facebook group, there's also a link there for that. We do a challenge every single month, and this month's challenge is to create a painting in a limited color palette that's 4 or fewer colors. So this is actually going to be my entry into our challenge this month. At the beginning of the following month, I'll make a little montage video featuring everybody's paintings who entered into the challenge and put it up on YouTube for everyone to see. If you haven't yet, please make sure that you subscribe so you can paint with me on Tuesdays, vlog with me on Thursdays, and join me on Sunday for a live Q&A session. Thank you as always for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.